Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm your host, Karen Soutar, and I'm here to talk to you about some Blue Jays baseball this evening. Sunny Side of the Dome is brought to you by Jays from the Couch. We stream live Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. You can follow us on Jays from the Couch's YouTube channel. Follow along live if you like. You can also follow through our Facebook or Twitter pages. We stream live there as well. And if you don't catch the live show, it's always available as an archive recording through any of those medium. And Jays from the Couch, if you like what we do here on Sunny Side of the Dome, if you like this content, there's plenty more where that came from. There's Jays from the Couch's main podcast, which is Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. That's hosted by Sean Doyle, the founder of Jays from the Couch, and Sean does a great job with the Sunday evening podcasts. Lots of interesting stuff, lots of variety, whether one or two coachers are on there with him, for a little variety, for some different inputs. He's also had some other interesting guests, people who cover other MLB teams, or even some media who cover the Blue Jays. Shai Davidi, Keegan Matheson, and even Jordan Romano a while back. So that's very interesting. If you don't tune in, you definitely should. As well, there's another YouTube show on Tuesday evenings, the Unfeck Circle, that's hosted by Steve Feck, the Feckless Wonder. And Steve's shows are always very interesting to watch. Steve is very intelligent. He knows a lot of different things. He has some really unique viewpoints. And I find that Steve always makes me laugh and makes me think about things, often in ways that hadn't occurred to me before. I often don't agree with Steve, but that's fine. We're all entitled to different opinions. But his show is very worthwhile. So if you haven't been tuning into the Unfeck Circle, definitely recommend doing so. All right. How's it going, everybody? Happy Thursday evening. The opening day is just a week away. They're very exciting times for Blue Jay fans, for baseball fans, everywhere, because the opening day bell is about to sound soon. I wanted to take a moment. I want to thank everybody who has watched and listened to my show here at Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm very flattered. Anybody who thinks that it's worth spending their time watching and listening to me talk about what I think about the Blue Jays and things that are going on that way, I'm very flattered, and I want to thank you. And if anybody is actually watching this show live today, well, I'm doubly flattered. For many reasons, not the least of which is the fact that there is an actual Blue Jays game in progress right now. It's an exhibition game that started about a half an hour ago. Blue Jays are taking on the Tigers. Last I saw, there wasn't any score, but that was just at the end of the first. I don't know what's going on now. I want to focus on the show. During the regular season, this isn't something that we're going to be doing. I will still be doing Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm having way too much fun to stop, but it won't be conflicting with any live games in progress. So I'm scheduled for Thursdays at 7 p.m. If there's a game that conflicts with that, we'll rearrange something. Maybe we'll move the time of the show that day or something along those lines. So before we get to the heart of tonight's order, some news this week, and unfortunately, a lot of it hasn't been great news. There's injury news. So first off, Kirby Gates, I'm sure we've all heard by now that there's an elbow problem, and he's expected to miss multiple weeks, I believe, is the way it was reported. And then a couple of days later, he's been to specialists, seeked a second opinion, and it said he most likely needed Tommy John surgery. One of those times I think I made a comment, I know I did actually on last week's show when I was talking about the bullpen, and I mentioned the fact that Yates had only been into one game up until that point, and didn't want to necessarily sound alarm bells, excuse me, and hoping that it wasn't anything serious and that he was just rounding into game form. And well, turns out there was something going on there. So he, update as of this afternoon, he did have the Tommy John surgery yesterday. So his season is over really before it ever began. So Kirby Gates, all the best to you. Hope for a recovery as speedy as possible with Tommy John and complete recovery, and hope you can go on to still have a good career after that. I believe this is his second Tommy John surgery, and with the first, there's a pretty good recovery rate. After the second one, it drops a fair bit, so who knows what the future holds for him. Unfortunate for the Jays because they signed him probably hoping that he'd be the closer. That's what he's done in the past and done it very well. It's I kind of question it, and I don't know, maybe there are people out there, I'm sure there are people who know better than I am. I don't have a problem with the fact that the Jays took a chance and spent some money on a pitcher with a history of injuries. But once the diagnosis was revealed, Ken Rosenthal made a comment on Twitter that there were red flags twice in Yates' physical. So before the Jays, he apparently came very close to signing with the Atlanta Braves, only to have them back out of the deal altogether because he failed his physical. And then he was negotiating with the Jays, and they initially made him a better offer, around $8 million, I think it was. And again, there was something in his physical that wasn't great, but the Jays didn't walk away. Instead, they said, okay, we'll still sign you, but for less money. And I wonder if really I get the high risk, high reward, but when the risk is that immediate, and he failed his physical twice, maybe they should have walked away. I don't know. But anyway, so that is what it is. So now they're putting together the bullpen with some other options, and I think they've got some pretty good options, and I'll get into a bit of that later. Other injury news, George Springer, unfortunately, very unfortunately, he was diagnosed with a grade 2 oblique strain. Now, I am not in the medical profession. I don't know all that much about different injuries and how severe they are. Some people that I follow on Twitter were commenting that a grade 2 oblique strain is it's not something with a short recovery time, unfortunately, that there hasn't been a lot of official news about it. And what I have read is, well, fortunately his symptoms are mild, so he'll sit out for 4 to 5 days and then they'll reevaluate. From what I'm hearing, a grade 2 oblique strain, and I looked it up to get a little bit more information, the average recovery time, 2 to 3 months. Not what the Blue Jays or any Blue Jays fans are hoping to hear, certainly. But the way I see it is, I really don't want him to push himself into action or Blue Jays management to push him into action before he's truly ready. Because if he goes out there, plays a few games because he really wants to contribute and help the team win, and then it ends up making it worse, and he ends up with a grade 3 strain instead of a grade 2 strain, that could be even worse. That could be when surgery might be necessary, and then he'd be out several months. So then we're looking at 2022, hopefully. I don't want to say that. I would much rather get by, through, call it April and May, without George Springer, with basically the outfield that they had last year. So maybe not being able to trade Randall Grichuk, assuming that they did try to trade him, maybe that was a blessing in disguise. So I would rather do without George Springer for the time being, because they already had a really good offensive team last year without him. And then once they're in the heart of a playoff race, which I believe that they're going to be, then maybe he comes back healthy and ready to really contribute in June or July. And it'll be almost like they made a big trade for a star player and didn't have to give up anything to get him. So that's what I hope they're going to do. I think it's the lesser of the evil of the scenarios. So we'll see how that goes. And then more injuries. Robbie Ray fell. He was carrying his young child and tripped and fell, and apparently the child is okay. So thank goodness for that. Robbie Ray has a bruised elbow. I don't remember hearing whether it was his left or right elbow, but sounds like it was probably his left. So he's going to miss a spring training start, and then they'll reevaluate, and fingers crossed that it's nothing serious, because he was just doing so well in spring training. Definitely would have been, and hopefully still will be, part of the rotation going forward. So let's see how much time he has to miss. Hopefully not all that much. Anyway, in a moment, on to the heart of tonight's lineup. Okay, so basically what I wanted to talk about today, as I said, the opening day, it's a week from today, and there are, including today, there's 5 spring training games left. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that's it. And by the end of that, they've got to figure out what their roster is going to be, at least to start the regular season. So we're kind of looking at a roster crunch. There's a lot of roles and a lot of players that we know are going to be on the team, barring more injuries. Knock on wood 100 times. Yeah, so we know who the guys are going to be that have definitely made the team, but there's a few spots that are up for grabs where there's, say, 1 spot and 2 guys competing for it. So I wanted to kind of take a look at those and look at some likely scenarios and so forth. So keeping in mind one point that I touched on briefly at the end of last week's show is when there's a couple of guys competing for 1 spot and there's different philosophies. So often enough, I find that a player without a ton of major league experience who still has minor league options, who can be sent to the minors without being exposed to waivers and risk losing that player, sometimes those are the players that actually perform really well. And then you might have other players who are out of options, or maybe a veteran with an opt-out if he doesn't make the major league team, who maybe aren't even doing as well. So do you keep the player that's doing well in order to give your team the best chance to win, or do you go the organizational depth route in the sense that, well, I want to keep both of these guys, and I can accomplish that by optioning the higher performing player and keeping the veteran, and then you've got both in case something happens. But my problem with that always is you keep someone that isn't doing as well, and are you actually hurting your team's chances of winning? So going around, first the catcher situation. So Danny Jansen is the number 1 catcher. He has the most experience. He handles the pitching staff very well. He's got potential. I mean, he finished top 3 in Gold Glove voting in the American League in 2019. He was a good hitter in the minor leagues once he got his glasses, and he at times has hit well in the major leagues, but he hasn't been able to put all the facets of his game together consistently. And hopefully that'll happen in 2021. But anyway, for now, until somebody else takes Danny Jansen's job, he is the number one catcher. You need a backup catcher. So who are your candidates? Well, basically, I think it's between Reese McGuire and Alejandro Kirk. It might, under other circumstances, it might have been a little bit easier decision. For one thing, if Reese McGuire had minor league options, you could send him to the minors and hope that he can recover some of what he did. He actually hit well in the major leagues with the Jays in 2018 and 2019. It isn't a large sample size at all. He was in the minors for most of those 2 years, but then he was called up, and unlike what he did in his minor league career, he actually hit very well. And then in 2020, looking at his numbers in 2018 and 2019, the OPS was around 900. For a guy who had never hit much in the minors, you knew that there was going to be some regression. Boy, did he regress all the way to an OPS of 220 and an OPS plus of minus 41, not plus 41, where 100 is major league average and plus 41 would be pretty bad. Somehow he managed minus 41. I mean, how do you even do that? So there's that. And then there was Alejandro Kirk. Alejandro Kirk has always hit very well through his minor league career. It's a somewhat short career to date because he has never played, other than last year when he was in the majors, he had never played higher than A ball, but he hit very well. He had an OPS of 1,001 in 2018 and 868 at a higher level in 2019, so facing a little bit better caliber of pitching. But it just seems like there's no stopping Alejandro Kirk. I mean, you called him up last year, and he hit very well with a 983 OPS in 2020, doing very well again this spring with 996, almost 1,000. I mean, just this guy hits and hits some more. So do you go with the hotter player and who might have the better overall upside, at least with the bats, or do you go with the player who's out of options? And if you option McGuire, or you can't option McGuire, you have to DFA him and you risk another team claiming him. In this sense, and from everything that I'm hearing and seeing, I think Alejandro Kirk is going to be the backup catcher. I think the Jays like him a lot, things that he can do. He's worked very well with Robbie Ray. Kirk has caught Robbie Ray, and they've just done great together. Robbie Ray's had great things to say about Kirk as a receiver, that he was surprised about how advanced he is. And so, to me, I think all the signs point to Kirk, and the Jays will DFA McGuire, probably try to sneak him through waivers, hope nobody else claims him. And you know what? If someone else claims him, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world for Reese McGuire anyway. Maybe a fresh start elsewhere. A lot happened last year with Reese McGuire, not much of it very good. And maybe if he gets a fresh start, he can turn his career around. So either way, best of luck to him. Next up, there's the bench. So I think we pretty much know who the regular position players are. Again, barring injury, on the infield anyway, you've got Vlad Guerrero Jr., you've got Bo Bichette, Marcus Semien, Kevin Biggio, and Rowdy Tellez. You want somebody, a bench player who can play infield if somebody needs a day off or anything along those lines there. So who are your candidates? Guys that are in-house anyway. Well, there's Joe Panick, who was with the team last year, and they brought him back, but right now he's a non-roster invitee. And being a veteran, he also has an opt-out if he doesn't make the major league club. And actually, I think that's coming up. I think I heard that was today even. So I'm not quite sure how that works. If they're going to give him a spot, if they have to clear a spot today, or we'll be hearing soon enough, I'm sure. So there's Joe Panick. There's Santiago Espinal. So he made his major league debut last year, and I think Santiago Espinal has a lot of talent. I think he's got some upside at this point in his career. I think he's going to hit a little bit, play some defense. I mean, he did some interesting things last year running the bases and really made things happen with his head. And I love to see that myself. And then a third option, Breivik Valera. Now, Breivik Valera is actually out of options. So again, it's a situation where they can't say if Breivik Valera doesn't make the team, and then they would have to put him on waivers, and then maybe someone's going to claim him. So how do I think it's going to go? Well, Joe Panick, as I see, he's a veteran infielder, and I think Jays management really like him. They like his veteran presence on the team. Last year with the Jays, he didn't hit that well to begin with, but then around halfway through the season, as it was being 60 games, he started to hit much better. So he was trending in the right direction as things were wrapping up. Breivik Valera, he was with the team. Actually, the Jays acquired him in 2019, and then I guess they found him to be more expendable than some of the other guys on their 40-man roster, because they already did DFA him once in February of 2020, and I believe somebody else claimed him, but then they got him back, and I kind of feel like the Jays see him as someone who could be expendable if they need a spot. And again, Espinal's having a wonderful spring. His OPS is 1104, so that's really good. I really like this young man. As I said, I think he's got a lot of talent, but he's a young player with minor league options, so it's very easy to keep him around, but use one of the options and send him down to the minors, at least to start the season. I think what they're going to do, I think they're going to keep the veteran Joe Panick. As I said, they like him. He's also a left-handed batter, and they've got a pretty young team for the most part with a lot of young guys. So I think they like having him around. So they've got to get him onto the 40-man roster. So we'll see what happens there. Next, the outfield. So, but funny how just in the course of a few days, the entire picture can change, because a week ago or even a few days ago, we were looking at 4 outfielders for 3 positions, with George Springer, Randall Grichuk, Teoscar Hernandez, and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Well, now with the situation with Springer, and as I say, I hope they don't risk his long-term health by rushing him back. I really hope that he takes the time that he needs to get healthy, and if that happens, unfortunately, we're not going to see George Springer for at least a couple of months. Well, what that means is basically the outfield the Jays had for most of last year, that's your starting outfield. So Grichuk, Hernandez, and Gurriel. Now, maybe the fact that one of them didn't get traded, at least not yet, could have been a blessing in disguise. So if that's what happens, then you need a 4th outfielder, a bench player to come in, maybe give somebody a day off him here and there, emergency replacement. So your candidates, there's a couple of outfielders that have done quite well in that camp. Josh Palacios, who's already on the 40-man roster, having a very strong spring with the bats, at 1235 OPS, and apparently he's also made some good defensive plays in the outfield, so that's really great to hear about. He's someone that maybe they can call on at some point if something happens, knock on wood, if they need a call up, or something. If somebody gets injured or whatever, it's good to know that he's in the pipeline. I really think the immediate nod has to go to Jonathan Davis. Jonathan Davis has some major league experience. We know that he's a phenomenal defensive player, and I think that's something that can really help the Jays, even if he only comes into the game late in a game when the Jays have a lead as a defensive replacement to help them hold on to the lead. He could benefit the team in that way, for example. And as much as he hasn't been an amazing hitter in most of his minor league career, he might be a little bit of a late bloomer in that way. I'm not suggesting Jose Bautista 2.0 or anything like that, but I mean, he had a very good spring with the bat last year. He's having a good spring with the bat again this year with a 941 OPS, and even last year he spent a little bit of time with the big league club, and he did fine with the bat with an 808 OPS. So maybe he's figuring something out hitting wise. I definitely want to see him. If George Springer is going to be lost for any length of time, I really want to see Davis be the next guy up, and hopefully they can get a long look at him and really see what he can do in the majors. So moving on from there, there's the pitching situation. So with the loss of Kirby Gates, excuse me one moment, sorry. So with the loss of Kirby Gates, we've still got some relief pitchers who are pretty much going to be there, barring more injury. You've got Jordan Romano, Rafael Delis, Tyler Chatwood, David Phelps, Ryan Baraki. They've all really looked good this spring. And last week I talked a bit about some options as far as there was AJ Cole, Tim Meza, and Liriano, that it looked like they were three guys competing for two spots in the bullpen. And I was lamenting that Meza could be the odd man out, minor league options and all of that. Well, silver lining to Yates being lost for the year, there's a spot. So probably I would say all three of those guys are going to end up making the team. That gives you 8 relief pitchers. I don't know if they'll go with 8 or possibly 9. And if they go with a 9th, there's Julian Merriweather, the club, although last fall they had said they consider him a starting pitcher. More recently, they said that he would likely be used in similar ways to how he was used last year, which was in shorter stints, 20 to 40 pitches per stint sort of thing. So if he's healthy, they will probably give him a shot. He has a really good arm. He hasn't pitched yet this spring. I've heard that he's actually scheduled to possibly pitch today, hopefully. So we'll see if he's healthy enough to go. Another option, although I don't know that he would make the team out of spring, but definitely someone to consider for the future if they need a call up, and I'm sure they will at some point, is Anthony Castro. He's really put himself into the picture. He's had a very strong spring. He's really done well out there. So something to keep an eye on there. And lastly, the rotation. So if everybody's healthy and ready to go, I think the rotation for now is pretty much set with Hyun-Jin Ryu, Robbie Ray, Steven Matz, Tanner Roark, and Ross Stripling. We'll see what happens with Robbie Ray, and hopefully he'll be ready to go for opening day. But if not, who is likely to get that last rotation spot? A few candidates: Trent Thornton, TJ Zoick, Anthony Kay. Thornton actually pitched for the first time in the spring yesterday, and he faced the Yankees. He pitched 3 innings, and he actually looked very good. Didn't give up any runs, and looked quite strong in that way. Anthony Kay has pitched in a few games, and he has in 11 innings pitched. He has 11 strikeouts, so he's He's done pretty well. I think he pretty much had two very good games, and then one when he was where he was a little bit more shaky, unfortunately. I like Anthony Kay. I think he's really got some talent. Unfortunately, he can be a little bit inconsistent at times. And then there's TJ Zoick. TJ Zoick has had a terrific spring. He's pitched 7 innings. He has a very fine 1.29 ERA. Zoick, I think, often gets overlooked because nowadays, with baseball, in the modern day way of looking at baseball is they really value pitchers who strike guys out. And Zoick, as much as he does well, he's just not a big strikeout guy. He's a ground ball pitcher where it relies on putting the balls in play and the defense doing their thing behind him. I mean, even this past spring when he's done as well as he has, you're kind of hoping, if you're a Zoick fan, you're kind of hoping that, okay, maybe he's found a way to strike some guys out. In 7 innings pitched, 1 strikeout. So as much as I wish they'd give him a little bit more of a look, I would kind of bet against that. I think they might actually, if they need another starter, I think they might actually give the nod to Thornton, even though he probably won't be stretched out enough to be a starter right off the bat in terms of somebody who goes at least 5 or 6 innings. There might not be enough time to get him up to that strength. But I mean, they could have him start if they need someone, an emergency starter. They could have him go 4 or 5 innings until he gets stretched out more and he can pitch a little bit deeper into games. But I feel like that's the way that they're going to go. On that note, we're almost out of time, which brings us to Through Blue Jay Colored Glasses. So, again for this evening, sticking with the theme of kind of late additions to the roster. So we know about our Bo Bichette's and our Vlad Guerrero Jr.'s and Hyun Jin Ryu. We know who the established star players are. I think that somewhere in this group, there's going to be a diamond in the rough, someone who maybe makes the team late, maybe doesn't even break camp with the team, but somebody who ends up on the team almost unexpectedly, or because somebody else has gotten injured or something's happened and you think, oh my goodness, we just lost so-and-so, what are we going to do? And someone's going to step forward, someone that most fans aren't even thinking of. I don't know who, but I feel like there's going to be someone out there who's going to surprise fans and make much more of a contribution than people are expecting. And I really do expect this to be a playoff team. Might not be a championship team. I'm not counting on it in 2021, but I think they're going to keep moving forward. I think 2021 will be better than 2020, and they're going to continue to build, and it's going to be something special. So that's my take for this evening. And now we've come to the end of our show. So thanks again for tuning in. Go Blue Jays. I'm going to go check the score. I don't know about anybody else, but thanks for tuning in. And opening day is in a week.